Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Thunderstock Show. It's a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's special guest is Lisa Woodruff. She's out of Cincinnati, Ohio. She is a multiple time published author who understands ADHD and organization intimately, which is something that makes me very excited to talk to her. She also was awarded the one of the top female business owners in Cincinnati recently. So without further ado, Lisa, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Lisa, we were talking a bit off camera, but what did you always want to be when you grew up?
Always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That's all I've ever wanted to be is a stay-at-home mom.
Well, I know that you've got quite a career path winding ways. Did you do stay-at-home motherhood for a stint of that career?
I did, and it's nice of you to say a long, winding path. In other words, I'm old. I'm 54. So I think
would say
women,
accomplished. I would say accomplished.
Women tend to have many lifetimes in our lifetime. Yes, my goal was to be a stay-at-home mom. So I remember when I would blow out the candles on my birthday cake, I would always wish that my mom would have another baby. That didn't happen. I have one sister. And then when I turned 12, I got a Red Cross babysitting course license. I started babysitting. So I did that in high school and college. I got an early childhood elementary teaching degree, and I was a preschool teacher in my 20s. And then in my 30s, I was able to be that stay-at-home mom that I always wanted to be for a decade. But here's the thing, Ross. It's very expensive to live in the world. So I loved being a stay-at-home mom. And I earned, some side hustle money while I was a stay-at-home mom. But our family was really expensive. And so I needed to earn some more money than I had been earning before, but yet I couldn't go back to teaching. So I'd gone back to teaching, but working full time wasn't really working with our kids' schedules. They had a lot of doctors and school appointments. So I started my business in my 40s. And then in my 50s, I added on a PhD. So I started a business to get myself organized and got everyone else organized. And I've evolved from there.
Are you by nature organized, or is this something that you learned as a skill, which we will get into because you have a philosophy that I need to probably adopt, which is that organization is a skill that can be trained.
So I was an organized kid. I was a chatty kid, and sometimes my mom needed to get things done. So her punishment of choice was sending me to my bedroom. I'm not always sure that I really was misbehaving, other than she kind of needed the verbal break. And every time I went to my bedroom, I completely reorganized it, moved all the furniture, cleaned everything. My gifts to her growing up would be to organize her art room. She was an artist, and then she had a business from home, and I'd organize things. So I was an organized kid. And for the first 40 years of my life, I thought, some people were organized and some people weren't. I didn't realize it was learnable until I was in my 40s.
That's interesting. If my grandmother were still here, I would love for you two to speak, because just for this context, this is like hitting so close to home. She went to school to college for home ec, and I think her mission was accomplished when she met my grandfather. But my grandfather, aunt, uncle, and father, all ADHD poster children. Grandfather, just, you talk about someone that you walk into his office and it's like a tornado, and then coming down, and I got hit with the same thing. But she I don't think my grandmother was the opposite, where everything was just very organized, orderly, and thank goodness for her. How do you deal with having family members that maybe aren't as inherently gifted with that skill set straight out of the womb? I know you've mentioned that you have a child with ADHD. So how did that journey affect your later studies and writings?
So first of all, I am organized and I can organize a space, but I'm also multi-passionate, dyslexic, and recently diagnosed with ADHD as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
when you have 32 projects going on at one time, it doesn't look organized. And when something's really organized, that's boring to me. So I'll just create chaos. So my house doesn't look like a magazine, although it is organized. And the other thing I noticed that when you want to get organized or you want to clean up a space and there are multiple people in the space, you will always think that all of your messes are organized, even if they're not. Whereas other people like my husband, who's basically a minimalist and has like 4 things, if one of those is out of place, I'm like, oh, can't you put your stuff away? And he's looking around at the trail of stuff that's just everywhere. I'm like, I'm in process. Those are in process. Just don't move them. Like, I'm going to get back to that project. So I think we look at our clutter and mess different than other people's clutter and mess. And so I often will say, until you, and usually it's the female head of household I'm talking to, until you have organized all of your projects and your messes. You don't really need to focus on anybody else in the house. And usually, like 80% of what comes in our household, I bring in there. So I've got a lot of work to do before we focus on anybody else. And along the way, when you do that, because I used to do in home organizing, when I go in home and I would organize, usually the female head of household, the family would kind of follow along. Like as you got one room organized, they would keep it organized. They would follow that organization that was set. And if you have multiple children in a family, usually one of them is organized. And I would find which child that was. And then I would tell the whole family, follow whatever system they put in place. Because the child will set up a system, but the family won't follow it and it'll frustrate the child. And once I empowered the children, whichever child was most organized, like they took that mantle and they were like, Lisa said that I could do this. And this is the new system. And they really enjoyed setting it up and maintaining that system.
Yeah, you mentioned something about having 30 plus projects at one time. And I can totally relate as someone that, spent the beginning part of my career working for, one company at a time as an in-house marketer. As soon as I was introduced to the agency model of business where you have dozens or hundreds of clients, I was like, oh man, this is so much more stimulating than just getting all my work done in a
Yeah.
day and a half. And then the next 30 hours of the week, I'm like, okay, or it's Friday. So you said you had a late diagnosis. What preceded you figuring out that you also had ADHD?
So I had a lot of clients when I was doing in-home organizing that either were diagnosed with ADHD or thought they had ADHD. And then I created online systems after I was out of doing in-home organizing, very similar to how you were mentioning EOS. You have another podcast where you talk about EOS implementers putting in operational systems in businesses, entrepreneurial businesses, which are like, chicken running around with the head cut off. And I did EOS in my company as well. And I do that in the household. Like I set up these operational systems in the household. So as I was doing that, the system that I have is called the Sunday basket. And it basically externalizes all the projects you do in a household, just like you would in business. Like all the family members have a slash pocket and all the projects you're doing have a slash pocket. And one of my friends said, wouldn't it be funny if we found out that you have ADHD and what you've done is you have solved the problem of ADHD at home, like you did as a teacher in the classroom? And I was like, ha ha ha, Monique, wouldn't it be funny? Well, time went on and I was working with an online company that did ADHD diagnosis. And I was like, well, I want to test this service. So I did the online diagnosis. It was like, you have ADHD. I was like, interesting. So I went to a local psychologist and my kids went to a language learning disability school that's one of the top in the nation, and they have psychiatry on staff. And so I went to the head of the school and I was like, let's figure out if I have ADHD. And she said, there's no way you have ADHD. You're too accomplished. I was like, are you saying that if you have ADHD, you can't be an accomplished business owner? She goes, oh, no, that's not true. I was like, okay, then let's figure out if I do or don't have it. And she's like, I said, what do you need to do? And she's like, well, I'll need to run these tests. I'll need to see your report cards. I'll need to talk to your mom. I was like, great, do it. Like run every single test you need to figure out if I do or don't have ADHD, because I was diagnosed with dyslexia in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back, she runs all the tests. I come back later. She goes, oh, you're a flaming ADHD. You're like off the charts ADHD. But I have created a life in which I applied my basic understanding of organization and how I used to teach kids in school. So in school, I taught preschool, I taught Montessori, math, which was individualized. I was the reading instructor or the person that would take kids who had learning disabilities or ADHD, and I'd create alternative lesson plans for them. So I was used to coming up with alternative ways to solve the same problem in school. And I just did that in my life. So I hire people. The first thing I do when I start a business is I'm going to need an assistant. Let's get somebody who's going to finish all this stuff that I'm going to start. And so my friend Monique was right. I do have ADHD, and the systems I've created in Organized 365 do externalize all of these harebrained ideas I have that actually turn into something. And now I've gotten my PhD. I'll be done in June, and I'm going to set out to do scientific studies to see if this is a non-pharmaceutical intervention for ADHD. We have non-pharmaceutical interventions for ADHD in schools and things like that for children under 18. But once you become an adult, there aren't any. There aren't any being researched. None of our research money is going to that. It's all going to medication, which is fine. I mean, you can use medication. Some people need medication, but also it would be like saying you're going to lose weight only by taking Ozempic and you're not going to also walk or change your nutrition or anything else. Like I'm all for all the pharmaceutical, like insulin, all that stuff, but also there are things that we can do that can work along with medication. And we're not even looking for those solutions for adults.
Yeah, I don't think that there's just one thing that factors into somebody's genetics that says, this X is present, therefore ADHD, because that would be a monocausal, um,
Hmm.
I don't want to say symptom, but
Right.
monocausal cause, one reason. And then it's like, oh, just take a pill. It's magically fixed. Like, that, I know that. It does. Why would you not be armed with a holistic approach to
Right.
solve something? You also mentioned having the self awareness to get help, whether that's through an assistant or through systems and
Yes.
processes. I think that an interesting take is, anything can be taught or you can overcome whatever the deficit is, whether that's with
Hmm.
ADHD or whether that's with experience, when you have a way to learn. One interesting perspective or question I have for you is, with your background in early education,
Hmm.
how has being able to teach different disciplines and subjects to some of the most malleable brains
Yes.
helped you to work in the more career, the adult world? Because I feel like if you can teach a toddler how to do something and stick with it, then teaching an adult might be a bit more of a walk in the park.
Well, if an adult has the desire to learn and to change, so
Mm.
the difference is the children kind of have to be wherever you are. Children, so it's interesting. We've been to a lot of doctors, but there was a psychologist when my kids were younger that said something that really stuck with me. And they said, children do not misbehave just to get back at you or just misbehave. They said, children's behavior is telling you how they're feeling, and children desire to do good. They desire to have adult approval. And so if they're not getting it, then something is amiss. And I was like, that's
Mm.
so interesting. Also, I really did a lot of research on Maria Montessori. I didn't have Montessori training myself, but I did give that to my kids, and my grandson is in a Montessori preschool. I love the Montessori philosophy. And Maria Montessori was the first doctor in Italy, and she took the uneducable children and created a school for them, and they were able to learn. And that was similar to the first grade classroom that I had my third year in teaching. I was put in a classroom, and they put all of the children who either were already on IEPs, which are individualized education plans for learning disabilities or other reasons, or thought were going to be on those plans in my classroom, because I had been the key kindergarten teacher who had the at risk students. So they kept
Hmm.
all the at risk students together and they put them in my classroom, which is unusual. Usually you divide them up so that you have typical and at risk kids together. But in this case, that's how they created my first grade job. So I had all the at-risk kids in one room. And at this time, this was 1996, 97 in Ohio. You could fail first grade. Like you could fail first grade at that point. And a lot of kids did. Like a handful of kids every year did. And those kids would have been in my class because that's where we put them all.
Mm.
So I said to the parents at the beginning of the school year, I said, your child cannot fail first grade. Only I can fail to teach them the subjects that are in first grade. So I took 100% of the onus of teaching on me. And then I set out to figure out how to teach the kids whatever that skill was. So for this one child, I went through 8 different ways to teach him math. Like I was like, okay, we'll try this way. We'll try this way. And I kept researching, how can I teach it? And so one of the things that I like to say about, is organizational learnable skill? Well, a lot of the way that organization is presented and taught or sold is a design aesthetic. It needs
Hmm.
to look like these bins. It needs to look labeled. And a lot of professional organizers who can get you organized in your house have 1 or 2 tricks in their wheelhouse, and they come in and every house they organize looks the same because this is how this organizer likes to organize. So a uniqueness of how I organize is I take the tenets of like, okay, well, what do we need to organize? We need to organize your kitchen. I said, okay, well, who's in your kitchen and what are the food nutritional things and how much do you cook? And like for me, I always ran my business out of my kitchen. So there was a cabinet for my business and there was a lunch packing station. And I would create the kitchen around how you actually use that space so that it would stay organized. But every kitchen that I organized was different. There were no 2 that were the same. So when you really take the student that needs to learn the subject and then you match them together, then the learning typically will stick much more than if you are the lecturer who's going to lecture on the facts and the student has to capture what you're saying at the pace that you're giving it and then regurgitate it back to you. I was never that kind of teacher.
Interesting.
And none of my students failed, by the way. They all went to second grade.
But that's an interesting way to look at teaching, which then would apply to leadership and management. It's like
Yes.
extreme ownership and accountability. It's like, hey,
Yes.
look, you're not failing because of, some deficiency and you took the onus. It's like, hey, if I can't figure out how to teach you, then that's a me problem. How does that same philosophy transferred over to your business career?
So I think in my business career, it then looks like uniqueness. So I love Dan Sullivan and his idea
Hmm.
of uniqueness and putting people in their uniqueness. And I believe that I've been dyslexic since I can't spell. I went 8th grade, I'm old. So in 8th grade, there was this thing called a C speller or something. And you would be able to type in the word you thought you were spelling and it would tell you how to spell it right. This was before computers at home. And I brought it to my dad and I said, it's broken. He said, well, what word are you trying to spell? And I would tell him. And he said, well, how did you spell it? And he looked at the thing and it was not phonetic at all. And he goes, you can't even spell wrong right. Like I cannot spell. I cannot spell. And I
Hmm.
think it was John Maxwell who said, do not focus on your deficits, focus on your strengths. Because if you focus all your time on your deficits, you could go from an F speller to like a D. But if you focus on your strengths and you're at a B or even an A minus, you could become the best in the world at your strengths. And because I was so bad at spelling, I mean, my 6th grade teacher said to my dad, she's just going to have to carry around a dictionary for the rest of her life, like right in front of me. I was like, "Hi, this is a Gen X childhood, you guys. That's why we're a little
Right.
off. The Gen X
Yeah.
childhood is just a little off, and this is why." And I was like, "Okay, I'm never going to be able to be a good speller." So the first thing I ever hire is an editor. This is before we had Grammarly and all that. Like,
Hmm.
I can't send anything without it going through spell check. So once you know that you have a deficit that you can't overcome, and you focus on your strengths, well, I just focus on everybody's strengths around me. So what is your strength? How do we push into your strength and how do we shore up your weaknesses? How can we eliminate them entirely if you're in business by hiring somebody or at home? Like if this is something you're really weak at, can you get a body double? Can you hire it out? Can you just eliminate that altogether? We don't have to do everything. In school, we try to make you well-rounded. But as an adult, you're really successful when you go after your uniqueness and you become more myopic and singularly focused on what makes you uniquely you.
Yeah, because the marketplace doesn't really care what you're not good at. They just want to
Right.
exchange value for what you are good at.
Right.
Oh, man, that's such an interesting perspective. With that in mind,
Mhm.
um, there's AI out there, like you mentioned Grammarly as a tool and all types of ways to help with administrative and spelling. It's not even I was making a face for those of you listening, it's because that's not even to hear that in education now. It's like, come on, we can get over that. It's like the same thing as like, oh, you need to learn how to do math without a calculator because you can't have a calculator in your pocket. It's like, well, you can have something better than a calculator in your pocket. It's called a smartphone. But yes, I still agree you should learn formulas of math. Now, with that being said, there's some things that you can't use AI or computers for, which are organizing your home, making sure that the Sunday scaries as an adult, which have nothing to do with alcohol, more to do with, oh my gosh, am I going to be ready for the week?
Right?
Am I going to be ready for the week with
Yeah.
meals and scheduling of kids' events and all kinds of things, cleaning? So, how did the thesis for your business? What was the catalyst for that to, take flight? Like, did you have a bunch of planning beforehand, or did it just sort of happen?
No, there was no planning, which is hilarious because I'm such a planner. And thank you for pointing out that AI is coming for the household last. So you guys are worried about your jobs.
Yeah.
It's not going to solve anything that we're doing at home. So I had a plan for my life until I was 40. And I set and I achieved that plan. And then I was about to be 40 and I was like, okay, well, this stay-at-home mom thing isn't working anymore because we need more money. And the kids actually aren't at home during the day, but they do need the flexibility of at home. And I can't go back to teaching because that's not going to work. And I just was really stuck. Like, where am I going to go from here? I didn't see myself as a corporate woman or going and getting that kind of a job. I didn't have that kind of a degree. I had a teaching degree. I didn't know what to do. So I quit my teaching job because that wasn't working. And I started the company Organized 365 with a blog because I knew Organized 365 was a good SEO keyword. That was it. And then I joined another direct sales company because I've been in 23 total. And I was like, I'm sure that'll
Uh,
solve the problem. And I just started organizing my own home. I said to my husband, I know I need to make money. I know we're going into debt so fast, but I don't even recognize this home anymore. I've been living on the hamster wheel for the last 7 years. My parents had gotten divorced. Dad had gotten sick. He had passed away. I was the executor of the state. The
mm,
kids, had a lot of medical diagnoses. We went through the 2008, 2009 recession. The direct sales company I made the most money with went bankrupt twice, which
mm.
didn't know you could do that. And so I was just like, I need to reset. Like, I need to reset the house. I need to reset everything. As I was resetting the house and blogging about it and going to all these different blogging events, I had a direct sales party, my third direct sales party, and there were 25 people in the room. Now, if you've been to any Mary Kay Tupperware type party, you don't have 25 people in the room. So I said to my friend, I was like, who are these people and why are they here? And she goes, well, Lisa, everybody wants to know what a professional organizer has to say. I was like, I'm a professional organizer? She goes, of course. I was like, oh, I didn't know it was a thing. I had been charging people to organize their houses, but I didn't know what I was doing. So that weekend I went home, made a 5-page website for services and replaced my teaching salary within a month. I didn't know I was a professional organizer.
Within a month?
Well, yeah, because you're charging, $30, $40 an hour. I was only making $500 a week as a teacher.
Yeah,
so,
but you,
so 2,000 a week.
I'm just impressed that, because for a lot of people, it does not take 1 month to go through replacing their full-time job. So you really took flight.
Well, I already had I'd been in direct sales so long, so I had an email list. And then I was in this new company, which was organization related, which doesn't exist anymore. So now I was doing these parties and I would say, well, here's the acrylic container you could buy, or I could come organize your house. Okay, we would like you to come organize our house. So I only needed 2 or 3 jobs a week in order to replace my teaching salary. And that's how I got started. So that is how most successful companies you see started as a service. So I started as a service, did that for 3 years. Then I started the podcast because I realized during that time that people were learning, not only getting their spaces organized, which I love, but they were learning the skill. They were keeping the skill. And I realized that in 2 ways. One was I had people cancel. And I was like, you ran out of money or when do you want to reschedule? And they're like, no. I paid attention to the questions you were asking me and I just finished the work myself over the weekend. I was like,
So you taught the skill.
Yeah, that sucks for me because I need the money. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. This is learnable. And the second was when I had these 2 stay-at-home moms, I had organized them. I had done the mommy makeover package, which is what I had. It was their kitchen, their home office, their laundry room, and their closet. That was the mommy makeover package. I would get all that organized. So we did that. And the next year they both called me and they said, my house is a mess. You have to come back. Like it didn't work. And I was like, oh, this is terrible. So I came back and they're showing me, the basement and the toy room and the family room and all these spaces that need to be done. And I was like, okay, let's go look at the bedroom or the closet and laundry room and the office and the kitchen. And they go, oh, those spaces are fine. I was like, you now realize how much of a disaster you're living in because now you know what it's like to live in organized spaces. So those 2 things helped me realize, oh, okay, this is learnable, number 1. And number 2, once the system is set up correctly, you can maintain it and you'll start to realize you want the rest of your house to feel this way. So I started the podcast to teach that because I didn't have the time to do a YouTube channel and do my hair and makeup. It was way too much for me.
Right.
But also I'm so glad I did a podcast because when I'm talking on the podcast, you're in your own kitchen, your own closet, your own laundry room, thinking about what I'm saying, just like I'm a professional organizer standing right next to you, instead of looking at mine and comparing. So it was genius. 3 years later, I realized we needed some supplies. And so I patented, manufactured, and distributed those. And then it was 4 years later that I started the PhD.
Wow. So one thing I need to highlight in that story, even when you were a young child, your mother told you you're very chatty, you're very talkative. Very chatty. And then you spent a portion of your early career teaching, skills and teaching in a way that was very unique to the individual. And then you also said you spent a lot of direct sales organizations where you're doing sales. It's like all of the skills that were your unique ability leading up to the point just kind of came together for one thing. So compounding the skills over time that you're just like, oh, this is just who I am. This is what I do. It's a heck of a lot easier to start a business when you have a bunch of experience teaching, selling, not afraid to talk to people, not afraid to talk to the internet. I think that anyone listening, one key takeaway for you is like do an inventory on what are your skills that maybe you didn't get paid for yet, but you know that they exist in other parts of your life.
Right.
And then just kind of look at them and be like, oh, well, how does this apply to the thing that you want to do? Very cool. Now that kind of tells me the story of the business, but then writing is a totally different thing. It's like its own business. Like there's some people that I know that have never worked a job really in their life and they've been authors forever. Like that's their career, right? Is writing. But you've done a lot of stuff and you've written 4 books and a podcast. So like, Tell me about the segue into writing the books, and how did that whole thing come to be?
Yeah, so I think you got to remember I'm a teacher. So teachers are used to coming up with lesson plans. A couple
Mm,
podcasts a week is no big deal. We used to teach all week long. Writing a book is like, okay, well, that's just the subject. So my first book I actually published in 2007 before I even had this company. Our church here is a mega church, but it didn't have a church curriculum. It didn't have a budget for the kids' curriculum. So I wrote an annual curriculum for the kids at church. And then
yeah.
also my sister was part of a home church up in my hometown. And so I created a 52-week curriculum for 3 and 4-year-olds that was just Bible based on so that they would know the characters of the Bible. And I organized it by the ABCs. So it was like 2 per letter. And I created it so that you could do the activities with 25 cents per or less per week for each child so that it would work for this mega church that wasn't putting money into the kids and the home church up in my sister's hometown where they didn't have the money. And just so happens that when my kids were, 3 and 4 and going through the curriculum, and I was at a play date with one of the kids at this parent's house and they had a for sale sign in the front yard. And I was like, oh, where are you moving? And she said, oh, my husband just got a job at Thomas Nelson down in Nashville and he's now the CEO. And so he took my manuscript. He just took the church curriculum down there and sold it within a week. So that's not normal. It's not normal.
Wow.
That was my first book. And that is, it's still for sale on Amazon. And then I've written 5 inside of Organize 365. So each of the books inside of Organize 365, after you've been podcasting 11 years, I mean, that's a lot of content.
Right, right,
So
right.
themes come out. And so as different themes come out that are organized enough for books, then I'll turn them into books.
Interesting. So you have conversations or you speak about your live experience for a long enough period of time.
Right.
And then when you look back and reflect, you're like, oh, there's a book there.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting way to look at it. And I also love how your approach is just like, there's a problem. Oh, I'll figure out how to solve it. Like you just jump up and like,
Yeah,
oh, well, this
whatever.
problem doesn't need to be here forever. Like, let's try this. And by trying, I don't want to say the word luck because I think that's just preparation meets opportunity. But boy, the more you try, the luckier you get, huh?
Yeah, and what I would say to that is if you're listening to this, you're like, Jesus, this woman does so much stuff. Yes, I do. My husband's like, oh my gosh. I'll wake up and he'll say, what are you doing this week? I'm like, I don't really have a project. He goes, we need a project. Elisa without a weekend with get a project because I can't handle you without a project. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
very
was just gonna say
projecty.
yet. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm very
yet.
projecty. I got a lot going on. But what I would say is in writing a book, that book that I published with Thomas Nelson sold, I don't know how many copies, but it's not being sold by Thomas Nelson anymore because it's not selling enough copies to be in their catalog. So I have it back. That's why I'm selling it on Amazon. Most of my books are self-published. So the rule of thumb with publishing is that if you sell 5,000 copies of a book, the publisher makes back their money on you. Is
Mm,
basically how it happens. If you
okay.
publish less than 5,000 copies, they lose money on you. And publishing houses will keep publishing because they want to find the big Mel Robbins. They want to find the next big thing. I have
Sure.
never gone viral for anything. Nothing. I've had no overnight success. I've never had any big breakthrough. I am just consistent. I've
Mm.
never missed a podcast episode in 11 years. When I decide to do something, even though I do a lot of things, I'm very consistent with all of those things that I do. And so you'll get loyal followers. I learned that in direct sales. This is
Mm.
what I would tell my downline in direct sales. I don't care what you do, just be consistent. Because if people are watching for your consistency to see if you're still going to be in business. So I was in Creative Memories. We had workshops. Mine was always the first Friday of the month. It was a scrapbooking workshop. I said, if you do it 2 months and then not the third, and then you go to the second Friday, you'll never get customers. It has to be the first Friday of the month, every single month, all year long. And you put it on your calendar and you don't go on vacation during that time because people will buy from people who are consistent. If you're not consistent, they're like, oh no, they're not consistent in that. What else aren't they going to be consistent in? So I'm very consistent. So what you do, I don't put out books so I could be, I'd love to be a best-selling author. Who wouldn't, right? But that's not why I write books. I write books because there's enough information there to have a beginning, a middle, and an end for people to have transformation. I want people to have transformation. If this book can provide transformation, you would probably like the book, How ADHD Affects Home Organization. It's short, which also is good for the target market. And it's self-published and it's sold over 20,000 copies. But it's not traditionally published. It's not like some big publisher has it.
But
I tried to
self-published.
resell it it's self-published. I tried to resell it to a publisher, even though they knew how many copies I sold, and they said no. And I was like, all right, whatever. I guess,
Whatever.
whatever. I'll just do it myself.
Now, that's an interesting thing too with when it comes to rejection handling as well. I love that phrase you just said where, they said no, and you're like, whatever, I'll just do it myself. Like, I'm sure with direct selling and I'm sure with a lot of things in business, whether it's teaching or whatever, it's like the gap of time you get between hearing no and their next action. For some people, they just hear no and they just don't take a next action. And I think for you, you're just like, let's redirect it somewhere else. That will wait till we get a yes. So whether that's, organizing your house, writing a book, starting a business, making a sell, whatever it is, I think we can learn, Lisa, from your story. It's just like, if you just said whatever, every time you heard no, it would sting a lot less and you get more done.
Well, and you have to think about business models. And you mentioned AI earlier, and I am trying like heck to get my head around the whole AI thing. AI is going to upend every single thing we know, just like the Industrial Revolution did, just like the knowledge economy did. Like, we are living through the middle of a huge transformation, and understanding it is really hard. But when I started my company in 2012, I could have never done what I did in 2012 in 2000. Like, I couldn't have started, the World Wide Web was like still dial-up internet. So I
Right.
could not have had a blog, number one. Number two, how would I have done podcasting? Like, we didn't really have podcasting yet.
You've been podcasting before. It's been cool. Let's just put that out there. Like, I've been podcasting pretty consistently for 8 years, and you've got me beat by years.
Well, I listened to John Lee Dumas and Pat Flynn. Like, there just weren't that many podcasters back then.
No.
So I was going into podcasting, but here's what I'll say to everyone else. Technology is the key for you to be able to do anything you want. Like in
Right.
2000, I couldn't have done this because there wasn't an internet. Now, when I was in second grade, my mom took a credit card to New York and started buying clothes that then ended up in our house. And she started a business from scratch that she sold when I was in 8th grade. That's how you start a
Whoa.
business then. You went to New York and you bought samples, and then like boggles. I asked her questions about this today and she's like, well, I just, she doesn't even really understand how unbelievable what she did is. I keep saying, Mom, what do you mean you just went to New York with a credit card and started buying? Like, what was your business plan? Didn't have one. What did you and Dad talk about? Not really. Like, it was just like, she just like kind of did it.
She just
And
kind
so
of
what
did
I
it.
say to you is like, you can literally do anything. Ross, you and I were talking about Perplexity before this, which I just downloaded yesterday. I downloaded it because I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about how they asked Perplexity these questions. And at the end, Perplexity said, do you want me to put that into a CRM system for you? Or do you just want me to make you a CRM system? And the guy was like, I was like, what are we even talking about now? Do you know how much my CRM system costs me?
I
And
worked at
for
a
that,
marketing agency that
that's
had,
an email system if you guys don't know what that is.
customer relationship management,
Yeah.
CRM. I worked at a marketing agency that had a custom CRM that the developer spent hundreds of hours building and cost tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars when it was all said and done. And like the one that I have is free, built by AI.
We gotta
10
talk
years
later 'cause
later.
I don't know how to do this. I'm 54. I'm gonna learn because I'm gonna live to be old, but I don't know how to do this. So what I would say to anybody listening who's like, I can't believe you just got on Perplexity yesterday. I already have it like making my eggs. What I would say to you is you don't have the limitations in your understanding of AI and everything because you're listening to podcasts like this. When I go to a publishing house and I want to have a traditional book deal and they want me to jump through all these hoops, when I sell, 10, 20,000 copies of any books that I go out and do, they have such a limited mindset of they're trying to find the next Mel Robbins. They're trying to find the next Mel Robbins. Could be me. You don't know. But because I don't have a big enough audience, I'm the 32nd largest female business in Cincinnati. How big do you want me to be? How many followers do I have to have? I have a really loyal audience. I have a really profitable company. I have physical products. Like, I'm going to have a PhD. I have a lot of things to offer. Not good enough for a publishing house. And here's what I want to say to you. So what? I don't know if publishing houses are going to be around. And they're probably like, ooh, they're not. Look around. How many newspaper companies are there? How many, there are a lot of industries that aren't going to be around.
You are touching on a subject that I love, which is when industries start to hit their sunset and go down, the people that have made it and attach their ego or identity in said industries have this blindness to reality where it's like, no, this can't be true. I'm awesome. I have arrived at the stage of success. And it's just like, if you have the same line of thinking that Lisa just described, where, hey, I'm 54, I've got a lot of life left to live, better learn this now. Like, you don't get to that same
Right.
twilight, event, whether it's newspaper or look at Blockbuster with physical media or whatever it is. I mean, shoot, journalism is a great example too, where there used to be, you had to have this credentialed thing with this
Yep.
education, with, your uncle's best friend's cousin's this guy. Now
Right.
there's people that are top journalists that do
Yeah.
it from their home,
Uh-huh.
right? And so to that point, Lisa, I also want to bring up your consistency. Your podcast has 25 million plus downloads, but you said that you never once went viral. So
No.
walk me
And that's
through
still not big enough for a publishing deal, you guys. I'm just telling you.
the thing that I want listeners, because there's
Crazy.
some people that listen to me that also do podcasting, and
Mm-hmm.
sure, I don't want to say my podcast certainly doesn't have 25 million downloads, but I will say that it 20x in downloads in the last year versus the 7 years before, though. So it's not like it went viral. It just, you just do things for a very long
Yep.
period of time.
Yep.
Like from episode 220 to episode 320 we're at now, you can jump. And then I'm hoping that it does it again.
It will.
But for your podcasting journey, tell me what it was like the early days versus now, and what, if anything, changed from your input and output.
So I always had downloads. I think that the niche helps. Like when you're in, I'm
Certainly.
not a business podcast, so I'm an organizing podcast. Well, there are some more now, but it's like, what, 20? It's not like they're 2,000. Like if you type in organizing in
Right.
your podcast, see how many come up. There just aren't that many. And a lot of us started a long time ago. So I think that helps, number one. Number two, I teach like a teacher. And I have
Nice.
figured out that there is a seasonality to the household year, just like there is to a school year. Just like I would have lesson plans for school, I have lesson plans for the
spring
household.
cleaning versus how to winterize your home.
Exactly. Like all of those kinds of things. But there are more nuanced ones that I found. In the beginning, I was that professional organizer, like just kind of teaching you how to get organized. Those podcasts I have taken down because they've gone into a course. Then it was more the seasonality and this planning and telling more stories. For 6 years, we also had people who've been through my courses on there on Wednesday sharing their stories. We did that for 6 years. And then the last couple of years, I got too nerdy as I was getting my PhD. And a couple of things happened. One, I think the content got too nerdy. And secondly, there was an iOS change that still confounds me to this day. So now, if you follow a show in your iTunes and it downloads the episodes and more than 5 get downloaded and you don't listen to them, and then you listen to them, it doesn't keep downloading your episodes. You have to go back in and tell it to re-download it. And I'm busy, so I don't do that. So I know that a lot of my audience doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So I know I've lost about half my listeners just because of that iOS update, I would guess. Because I used to get 12 to 15,000 downloads per episode, and now it's more like 7 to 8. Some will get more, but that's about what it is.
And how many episodes do you put out? Like, what's your schedule?
Right now, just one a week. But back then, like a couple of years ago, I was doing like a Tuesday coffee chat and then this Wednesday interview and this Friday. So if you didn't listen within 2 weeks, your queue got full. And then when you listened, I just never repopulated again. And so I think I lost a lot of people just because it wasn't in their feed anymore because of an iOS update.
But I want to highlight something you said, very important. It's not like you're competing with the most popular categories on earth. It's not like you're competing with, like, as an author, you're not trying to write a book that'll compete with like Twilight or Harry Potter.
Right.
Or, name one, right? Hunger Games, these books that everybody reads.
Yeah.
You're super niched. And one of the things that I love hearing as a marketer is you just identified that niche plus consistency equals growth, because one of the misnomers that I think a lot of people have is they want to be ranked one on Google for like podcaster. Like, that's, first of all, I don't want to go down the tangent of SEO, specifically how it's changed. But second of all, it's like, well, if it's not like organization podcaster, then why do you care? Because you're competing with a bunch of people that aren't relevant to you.
Right.
So I think that having a dedicated audience and a dedicated message and a niche down service offer matters a whole heck of a lot more than just the vanity metrics of total views and whatnot.
Yeah. And then you're paying for all, if you have vanity metrics, then you're paying for more staff to answer all those questions on Instagram. You're paying for more email people in your CRM. If you're like me, still paying for a CRM and haven't figured out how to make your own. It's just, there's a lot of noise. Sometimes you have a
Mm.
lot more noise. And I would rather have profit than noise.
Well, if people are being honest, I think they think that the noise turns into profit until it doesn't.
No, it
And I
doesn't.
agree with you, which leads me to the one of the quotes that you had, I had researched on you is that minimalism and organization are not the same thing. And you said your husband's a
Ooh.
minimalist. So how do you take the noise and make it organized without having 3 or 4 things total?
Yeah. So I think that Marie Kondo, who sold 10 million copies of her book, by the way, is a minimalist and a decluttering expert. And then she had children, which is now funny because she's not that organized anymore. Anyway, minimalism is when you reduce the amount of things you have in your household so that it's easier to maintain them. It's also much more than that. But if you're not a minimalist by nature, like what my husband is, he just is not a things person,
Sure.
then your goal in feeling organized is to just get rid of things, is to declutter. So the big story is you have kids, they have a lot of toys, you're overwhelmed. So you go into the toy room and get rid of 80% because we don't need this many toys. I always say not to do that because then the kids have nothing to play with. So then they want you to play with them all the time. I want to be an entrepreneur, but you do you. So anyway, you get rid of things, and that's getting rid of somebody else's things instead of your things. And let's say that works for you for a
Oh,
period of time. However, now you're overwhelmed again, and the toy room doesn't have a lot of toys, but you don't know how to get that organized feeling. So you get rid of even more. Now you're getting rid of things that you actually need because you're going for that organized feeling that you got from getting rid of a lot so that your visual was changed. So I believe that organizing is a 3-step process. It's decluttering, leads to organizing, leads to increased productivity. And almost everyone you are going to talk to is either a decluttering person or an increasing productivity person. I'm an organizer. Very few people are actually organizers. Organizing is when you've gotten rid of the trash and the things that are broken and things you truly don't want. And then you wrestle with what is left. And you usually do this in analog. So you reorganize things. Sometimes you have to buy more underwear so you could do laundry less often, buy more spatulas because you're doing more kitchen stuff and you only have one good spatula. So you sometimes buy more. You reorganize how you use your space based on who's living in your household at that time. Once you're done and everything's where it needs to go, which usually takes about 18 months to 3 years, then you can increase productivity. So
mm,
increasing productivity is twofold. One, design aesthetic, which is how we're sold organizing, bins and labels and all that. Or two, making it digital. I am not your digital expert. I never talk about making things digital. It's all analog and paper with me. As you know, Ross, as I sent you a picture of what you needed right before
oh,
we
that
got
was
started,
amazing.
because I had printed it out and I didn't have it in digital form. And
For those of you, not to interrupt you, Lisa, but we had rescheduled due to circumstances, and the original questions and answers had got lost in the shuffle through rescheduling. And I'm like, Lisa, I'm so sorry I don't have these things. She goes, oh, I do on paper, and sends me an email with the printed out written thing. And I was like,
of
you
your
know what?
intake form.
That was that was clutch. That's just one
Paper.
example.
Paper is communicate. Paper is for communication, information transfer.
Hmm.
And because it was in paper, we were able to do it like that. I didn't have to search for it, find it. So I love analog. I love paper. Also, when you go to digital, digital is personal. So you can find your digital assets. But even like in hard Dropbox, my chief of staff said, okay, and I'll put that in our Dropbox for you. I was like, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to ask you to bring it to me the next time I give it. If you think I know where things are in our Dropbox or Google Drive, I do not. That is why
No.
you have a job. Digital things are usually, we've relabeled our Dropbox a bazillion times because
Right.
everybody has a different way they want to label it, even though that's shared. So spouses, family members, we don't use the same kind of phone. We don't use the same apps. We don't use the same AI. Just everything is different when you do digital. Digital and productivity is very personalized, whereas organizing can be analog and general.
Yeah, because anyone can walk into your house. And
Yes,
if it's organized, anyone that's present could be like, this makes sense. Like, I get it. Right? This is organized.
like a
Versus
kindergarten classroom.
to your example with the Google Drive or the Dropbox or what, pick your poison.
Yeah.
I had somebody as an admin reorganize my Google Drive, and I'll tell you, Lisa, I lost a week of productivity because I couldn't find because it was a mess before, but I could find it. Now it was just an organized, chaotic mess that I didn't do, and I was like, oh dear. Well, one of the things that, and we could talk about this at length. I know we don't have the time to do it today, but I urge Lisa, you and anyone listening, when you get to the stage in your AI exploration where you have, whether it's Perplexity's computer function or Claude's cowork function, whatever, just know that the problems and organization for your data digitally can be, there's a delegation element there for sure. So to your
But not in your
point,
physical household.
no,
So
no,
you
my
guys
physical
explore
household is still a
AI
mess.
and everything you want, but I like have job security.
Which is why I have a
Job
cleaning
security.
person, right? My data is clean because I have
Mhm.
AI's help, but my house is only clean, for sure every other week because I have a cleaning person.
Right?
And that was one of the greatest unlocks for my family and working from home. Oh my goodness. Where my office would give my wife anxiety. She'd be like, close your door. I can't look in there. I mean, I knew it was efficient. I knew where everything was and I could like this. But now that we have a cleaning person, it's like the best use of an investment because
Agreed.
the time that my wife or I would have to spend to get the same output, first of all, we're not as fast as her. Second of all, we don't have to worry about it. And it's just a
Yeah.
great arbitrage from investment. I think that's one of the core concepts for anyone listening. Like if you can invest in things around the house, maybe a meal prep service, right? I like to grill, but it's only like 4 to 6 months out of the year that I can
Yeah.
actually, you know, get out there.
Yep. I often will say, the mission of Organize 365 is to help you get your home organized so that you have time to do what you're uniquely gifted and created to do. If you already know what you're uniquely gifted and created to do, buckle down and get the house organized because once it's organized, it will save you so much time and you could definitely get it done in a year. I know you're still like, why a year? Well, how long would it take you to get a business that's disorganized, organized? It wouldn't be a weekend.
Oh no.
You have to go through the whole annual
The,
year of the business. Oh yeah, I forgot we do this for Black Friday. I forgot
the
we do this.
average EOS
Yeah.
implementer works with a client for 2 years. It's
Okay.
the
It's the
same
same
kind
in
of
your house.
it's the same
And
kind
your
of
house
thing.
is a business. Your house is a business. So you
Yeah.
you need to really put the time in because once you do EOS, once you get your house all the way organized, it stays organized for a long time.
Well, and I'm going to go back to the analogy with my grandmother who graduated with a home economics degree. My grandfather eventually got his MBA and he was a business leader, but he couldn't have done it
Right.
without my grandmother holding it down the fort and like making sure that he had, he was prepared to go out and do his thing. Cause without her,
For sure.
he wasn't, look, my grandmother passed away. My grandfather was about to be 96.
Ah,
So he realizes, oh, crap, like it's like, I really miss her sorely,
wow.
not just because they had a long relationship,
Yeah.
but because his apartment's a freaking mess. And it wasn't. It used to
Yeah.
not be, right? So anyway, I love the theme. It applies to so many, but I'll have to urge my wife to listen to this podcast in particular because there's so many commonalities.
Yeah.
My last question that's deep before I go to the not so deep question for you, Lisa. If you could give one piece of advice to your former self, maybe it was you when you were, growing up and deciding what you wanted to do, what would that advice be?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One, I mean, I love being a homemaker. I love, getting order in our house. Don't get your house so organized and get such a great A+ on your housework that you don't do other things that you're uniquely gifted and created to do. And
Mm.
then the second one, and I've been pretty good at this, but there have been times when I hold myself back is just try stuff. Just do it. No one's really watching anyway or critiquing you anyway. And I'm to the point in the business now that I've met and achieved all of my goals that I'm like, you know what? I think we're going to do this. And I look around and the team's like, okay. And I'm like, nobody's going to stop me. Like nobody's going to stop me from doing my own research, like academic research. No. Okay. All right. I guess we're just able to do this then. Like it's unbelievable how many things you can actually do that you think you need to get permission for. Who's going to give me
Permission.
permission?
So you need
Like,
permission from yourself.
yeah, just try it. Just do it.
No, I love that frame. Get permission from yourself and then don't worry about others' permission.
Yeah.
Last question that's not super deep is where can people learn more, get your books, connect, what have you?
So the podcast is called Organize 365. My website is organize365.com. And I'm most active on Instagram, Organize365.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you everyone listening. I don't run ads at the show. My only ask is if you found this to be valuable, share it with a friend. That's the best way the show grows. Until next time, everyone, be well.